Ah, frick. There's no more coffee. 2020 part 2. It continues. The madness. Welcome back, by the way. I'm your host, Volk, Spicy Icy, and we are here today to check out the secondary trailer for Pokemon Snap, the remake, coming out for the Switch on April 30th. Nintendo's already spoiled it for me, goddamn. It's fine, though. I'll let that one slide because it's actually coming out a few days after my birthday. And I am turning 28. I'm getting old. I'm becoming ancient and archaic. I am what you call a boomer. Is that what they call millennials these days? Now we're the boomers now. Well, at least I got to play the original Pokemon Snap growing up, so suck it, Zoomers. You didn't get that growing up. I'm sorry. I'm being a little bit rude. No, but really, I remember I have a lot of vivid memories of Pokemon Snap growing up. I happened to play it at another family's house. We were staying in America at the time on vacation, and I have ingrained images of the footage of the original game, like the volcano area with the Vulpixes and the Kangastons, and then the early, the start of the game where you ride the train. You're on that train, and there's a green field, and you can see the seaside in the distance. There's a wild dodo. I don't remember. Duo. I don't know all the names of Pokemon by heart anymore. I'm sorry. I need to refresh my memory again. Anywho, so I never owned a Nintendo 64 growing up. So for me, it was sort of a very strange fascination that I had watching the game. And I remember like the start of the game with Professor Oak telling you to be on this mission to get all the damn motivated pictures of these Pokemans. Yeah, it's part of my early memories of gaming growing up. I think I was 7 years old, maybe even 6 or 5 at the time. I really can't remember, but I was relatively young. I never got to play the full game because I never owned the actual console. All I had, the earliest console that I had was the PlayStation 1, and that was when I was already 11 or 12. So talk about being late. So I never really played games like Tactics Advance, any of the amazing classics for the PS1. Only maybe Medal of Honor. But putting all that aside, I'm really stoked because I haven't played a new Switch game since Animal Crossing came out, and that was a life changer. It was sort of the lifesaver for 2020, really. I mean, I don't think Animal Crossing would have been as prolific as it was had it not come out at the perfect time when we're in the middle of a global crisis. Literally, it's been hard. It's been hard for a lot of people emotionally, psychologically, financially. Tell me. I have not splurged a whole lot on video games lately. So for me, I've been kind of waiting, twiddling my thumbs, looking at these new releases, announcements for new upcoming games. I haven't purchased Cyberpunk 2077. We'll check out a video on that, by the way, a little bit later after this video that we're going to look at right now. Let's do it. Jazz snaps, whatever. Okay. A camera. Why? Oh, yeah. Snap. But it's a mobile phone that somehow has a Polaroid lens coming out of it. Cool. Oh, you know what that reminds me of? That vehicle reminds me of something out of Subnautica. Fantastic indie game, by the way. Okay, not Professor Oak. I'm not playing the game anymore. Ruined? No, but I will. But they should have brought back Professor Oak and not whoever that was. Very cute. Very, very adorable, I will say. I'm not really seeing anything particularly new other than the fact that we're riding a different vehicle and not a train. So I guess there was going to be better exploration, and it's not going to be strictly linear in a specific fashion. Because in the original game, you always happen to be on a sort of a specific path. It feels like with this new Pokemon Snap, we're going to have the ability to choose where we want to go. So I do like that. I think that's a major improvement, or sort of an added layer in terms of how expansive Pokemon Snap can be. And I do like that. So I'm hoping it is that which we saw, right? The fact that we can explore and approach the game in the way that we want, instead of the old-fashioned train track path that we were following, right? And at the time, in the original game, you had to really, like, you couldn't miss a picture, and so you were forced to continue the game. And if you missed a picture of a Pokemon, then that was on you. You didn't make it. But now it seems like they're giving you a little bit more of leeway with collecting all the pictures with this sort of nautical looking floaty platform vehicle thing. I don't even know what to call it. Couldn't find a word to describe it. Sorry. But yeah, I'm assuming this is going to be a $69.99 game. $80 for me, because I'm in Canada and we have things called taxes, very high taxes, but they go into the right places. I would hope, I would assume. Not mostly into the military, but that's a whole other discussion. I'm not going to dive into that. So now that we've seen this, we're going to now check out the apology video on Cyberpunk 2077. I hear that... I'm going to just hide this for now. We're going to check out the apology video from one of the main developers, the lead developer. I don't know their name by heart, but that's not important. The important part is that Cyberpunk came out with countless bugs. From what I've seen on articles, it seems like the game was unfinished, even though it was delayed 3 times. I believe 3 times so far within the year. And they should have probably just delayed it until an undetermined amount of time, because I think that what happened there with CD Projekt Red is they really heavily marketed the game on the approximate year that they were planning to release the game on. They unveiled it originally 7 years ago, and then they didn't really give us any news on it until last year. No, in 2019 is when we got a pretty substantial trailer with Keanu Reeves showing up. So it sort of became a viral story, Keanu being on stage and all that, going, "You're amazing," and no, you're breathtaking, something along those lines. And that kind of propelled the marketing for the game. And I think that because of the game being viral due to Keanu Reeves appearing in the game and having him physically there and all that, I think that put a lot of pressure on the developer to really deliver on the release rather than the quality. I think that, and that's a major problem in the industry, is developers competing for dominance for supposedly Game of the Year awards during a given year. And they kind of, they will work their devs to the bone just to push a game to be done by a certain time frame so that they can somehow win Game of the Year during that period of time. And I think that that's a really terrible approach, because it all stems from the ego, and they're not thinking anymore about the product or the piece of art that they're developing. It's more about revenue sales at that point. It's about being the best in your field, right? So it's not anymore about creating a passionate project. The focus and the priorities are not in the right place anymore. So, and that's been a problem lately over the last few years. We've seen a lot of mediocre products, especially from games that have had sequels like Fallout 76. And then there were games like No Man's Sky that were far from what people expected. And then it only got decent updates 2 years later. So the problem here inherently is the fact that games are being rushed to be developed at a specific frame of deadline because they somehow, I think, want to dominate charts and sales in the gaming industry. And I think that that's not the right way to think about it. And I personally believe we're going to see a lot more, how do I say it? We're going to see a lot more creativity, I think, in the indie space. I think that indie developers are really the ones that we should be looking at more, because AAAs, while they do have a massive budget, that does not guarantee a product with substance. It might have, a pretty cherry on the cake on top, but on the inside, it's sort of stale, not necessarily rotten, although some sequels can be a step down. We've mostly seen sequels for big games that have been sort of milquetoast. They haven't been impressive. Okay, and if there are, then they're very few, and they're an exception to the rule, like God of War, for example. The last God of War, which leaned itself on Norse mythology that time. And it was sort of a rebrand remake because they didn't call it God of War number 5 or whatever number it is now. They simply called it God of War. They remarketed under a different aesthetical image, under, Norse Viking imagery and mythology. So that was sort of a refreshing way to remake and follow up on the series. I think that that's how we want to go for, is we still want to have innovation if we're going to be remaking or revising a beloved series. And in the case of Final Fantasy VII, the remake, for example, it was, they didn't really change a whole lot, except for they omitted parts of the original story. So it was the wrong way to go about it, because Final Fantasy VII, the original one, had so much character development, and it was not spliced, right? It was, it had part 1 and part 2, but they were big enough so that it didn't feel like it was fragmented endlessly, right? In this case, with Final Fantasy VII, the remake, we only got, 15 hours of what the 60-hour game is, the original one. So maybe a little bit more. I don't know. Point is, I think that we ought to support indie developers, because we still have great ones like Supergiant Games coming out with quality titles like Hades, which I still have not played and would like to try it eventually. And then there's games like Ori and the Will of the Wisps, a sequel that surpassed its first title by a fucking landslide. Oh my God. And it didn't win a single award at the Video Game Awards. So change is on the way. We need to prioritize quality of product, and video game development is about art. It's creative work. It should not be it is a prolific field at this point, right? Everyone's playing video games. I get it. People want to sell games. They want to be successful. But at its core, video games are such a transformative, not a transformative. I want to say video games are such a versatile category of art. It's a form of art that comprises of so many traditional elements, artistic elements, good writing, art. There's writing. Did I say right? I did say writing. There's voice acting, musical composition. There are so many artistic elements that are amalgamated to create this category of art called video games. So they sort of are fantastic in that way. And the fact that you're immersed in that whole experience, you can play as a main character and be in that first person view mode. And then now we have things like VR headsets. Video games are they are quite a step up in the artistic fields that are still existing. I don't know where I'm going with this rant, but I guess in short, we really shouldn't forget that video games are meant to have substance and depth and that juiciness. They're supposed to have that soul that developers pour into that work. We shouldn't have developers create games for the sake of selling and keeping subscribers. Let's say if you're talking about an MMO, it shouldn't be about selling a product, but more so about presenting you something that's beautiful and breathtaking, like Keanu Reeves said, right?
When I started Cyberpunk 25 years ago, one of its founding principles was honest and direct communication with gamers. When Cyberpunk Red, the game development part of Cyberpunk, was born, it added something important to that principle, the ambition to make the best games in the world. It became our mission and something that guided us up until now. Based on that legacy of genuine and honest communication, you've trusted us and pre-ordered our game. And despite good reviews on PC, the console version of Cyberpunk 2077 did not meet the quality standard.
Okay, so the console version was supposedly one of the worst iterations of Cyberpunk 2077. That part I forgot.
We wanted it to meet. I and the entire leadership team are deeply sorry for this.
Although, look, I might sound judgmental for this, but if you're wanting to play a game like Cyberpunk, why would you go for console? Unless we're talking about affordability, then in that case, I completely understand the argument, because computers are very costly. The ones that can run Cyberpunk at the highest quality, at the fidelity, at the highest fidelity of graphical quality, then yeah, sure, I guess that's a good argument, because consoles are a good leeway for gamers who are not that hardcore, but who are looking into diving into that space. I don't want to make people feel bad for owning a for not being able to afford a $2,000 computer to be able to play Cyberpunk. But you could even play Cyberpunk on better graphics, not necessarily at the highest, but you could still play them in mid-tier graphics and they would still look better than what's on console. So I feel like if you're going to play, like I said, if you're going to play Cyberpunk, I think PC is the way to go. It is always going to be the most preferred option, because you're going to be playing the game at you're going to see the game looking more detailed and being able to perform at a higher frame rate. That's also another point, because consoles are locked into a certain cap of frame rate up to, I don't know, 60 now. I think it's a little bit less than that, like 55. I don't know technicalities of the latest consoles, being that I don't own a PS, the latest PlayStation or Xbox. It's like I'm not a good resource to rely on information when it comes to that. Point being, I would still go for PC. If I happen to have both consoles and a good PC, I would always go for the PC version. The only reason that I would go for a game on console is if it were exclusive. And I think that exclusivity, while it is good to support, exclusivity is healthy if it's supporting platforms that aren't as prolific. So if we want to, have a diversification of platforms, then in that case, exclusivity matters. But in this case, exclusivity hurts to consumers, because if you can't play, let's say, Cyberpunk on PC and you would have to have a console, then it just feels like you're needing to waste more money on a console, or to buy a console just to play a game that could run beautifully and probably better than a console, if you happen to have a well-built PC. So, and the thing is, Cyberpunk is a ginormous game, right? It's bigger than games like Grand Theft Auto. So the size of the game itself, I think, would be best experienced on a PC. So I don't know. I really don't understand why people would want to play on console, but I guess I guess the only reason again would be to, you know, if you couldn't afford, if you don't have a good enough computer, like if your computer is absolutely potato, if it's a laptop, don't play Cyberpunk on it. All right. So in that case, go for console.
And this video is me publicly owning up to that. Please don't fault any of our teams for what happened. They all are incredibly talented and hardworking. Myself and the board are the final decision makers, and it was our call to release the game. Although, believe me, we never ever intended for anything like this to happen.
You didn't intend on it, but yet you still released the game a lot faster than expected because, again, I was saying this earlier, but Cyberpunk was originally unveiled in 2013. So that was 7 years ago. Look, like I had looked at the cinematic trailer at that time. I was watching it. I remember being excited about it. And I like the approach of not having to constantly talk about where they're at with the game's development year after year. And then it kind of surprised me what surprised me the most about the development process was the last year. After they had that Keanu Reeves presentation, I was a little frustrated at the sudden frequency of marketing around the game because it already gave me a signal. Intuitively, I already knew that this was probably not a good sign, that the game was going to have some criticism, that it was bound to have some criticism, and it deservingly did because it's riddled with bugs, although it's pretty on the outside and it has gameplay. You know, if you can't play a game at the expected quality, especially when you're developing a game for 7 years, like, you know, it's a big commitment to a game that we thought was going to be of a high quality level, like the Witcher series. And then you have stuff like this happening. Of course, you're bound to get some criticism back, but let's not conflate criticism with death threats and people who are making pointless criticisms that aren't justified. I think that reviewing games is absolutely fine. We should be able to criticize a game and keep the developers accountable for what they are known for the kind of quality that they're used to deliver. You know, if it's not up to par, then yeah, and if we can find the reasons why we don't think the game is good enough, then you better be accountable for how you approached the development of the game nearing the release date.
I assure you that.
So of course, yeah, you're going to lose consumer trust in that sense, or the fan base, or have a lot of disgruntled people, to say the least.
Our best to regain your trust.
But, you know, of course, criticism is fine. What's not okay is the violent and toxic methods of communication being shared online. So, reviewers and critics don't associate with that demography. But for some reason, a lot of people on social media can't. They have a hard time distinguishing the two. And it's almost like we're not allowed to criticize anymore because of these other groups of people being unfairly critical in unhealthy and disgusting ways. That's undermining the people that are legitimately criticizing as their line of work, like gaming critics, journalists who write interesting pieces and who report these bugs fairly after having actually played the game a substantial amount.
Now I'd like to tell you how the situation looked like from the inside. Cyberpunk 2077 is huge in scope. And I'm not only talking about quests or things you see at first glance. I'm talking about a multitude of custom objects, interacting systems, and mechanics. In the game, everything is not stretched out over flat terrain where we can make things less taxing hardware-wise, but condensed in one big city and in a relatively loading-free environment. On its own, this is a challenge, but we made it even more difficult for ourselves by wanting to make the game look epic on PCs and then adjusting it to consoles.
I cannot stand the word epic anymore.
Especially old gens.
Just simply due to the way how it's being overused in gaming at that point.
That was our core assumption. And things did not look super difficult at first. We knew the hardware gap, yes, but ultimately, I think that time has proven that we've underestimated the task. To give you a concrete example, and the main culprit, we had to constantly improve our in-game streaming system for all-gen consoles. Streaming is responsible for feeding the engine with what you see on screen, as well as the game mechanics. And since the city is so packed and the disk bandwidth of all gens is what it is, it constantly challenged us. Every change and improvement needed to be tested, and as it turned out, our testing did not show a big part of the issues you experience while playing the game. As we got closer to the final release, we saw significant improvements each and every day, and we really believed we would deliver in the final Day Zero update. Now let's talk about the review process. We started sending our PC review keys in the first days of December. On launch day, December 10th, we hit the ground running with a really good start on PC. While not perfect, it's a version of Cyberpunk we are very proud of. At the same time, we're fighting for quality on all-gen consoles till the very last moment. And every extra day of us working on the Day Zero update brought visible improvement. This is why we started sending console review keys on the 8th of December, which was later than we originally planned. This all happened while working from home with all the challenges resulting from the COVID-related restrictions. A lot of the dynamics we normally take for granted got lost over video calls or email, and we took that hit too. Now
See, that's what I don't understand. If they knew, if they were already prepared, well, I don't think, no one, scratch that. No one was prepared for the pandemic, but they still continued on with the development at, I guess, more or less at the regular speed. Now, I don't know I'm not privy of all the details behind the development process past 2020. But if they were already getting used to having video calls and communicating long distance, if we are already months into that, my question is, why did they think of releasing the game within that year? If I were a developer working at CD Projekt Red, I would have not chosen to push the game to come out within that year, especially with these complications that are being mentioned in the apology video. Again, I'm confused about this because while they acknowledge all these complications and they go, we didn't plan this and we didn't plan that, they still released the game within the year of the global crisis, which hasn't ended yet, and it's not done yet, though. Well, like, this might be the new normal for another year. I think that, again, some of the developers, they got to the point where they're like, well, we got to dominate the gaming space during these times because developers are already struggling to push their game out. So let's be the developer to release a good game so that we can take advantage of the fact that not enough developers are able to release games. So I think, that's part of that's part of my reasoning. That's what I'm assuming. That's how I think some of the development went at CD Projekt Red, is because they had such a such viral marketing with Keanu last year. And then you have the pandemic making it harder for devs to compete. Part of me thinks CD Projekt Red wanted to take advantage of that. I don't know that. I don't know their intentions. But knowing how AAAs operate in the games industry, I would not be surprised if they were wanting to take advantage of relevance in the gaming sphere because of this global predicament that we're in. I really don't know this, but what other reason? Why would you want to release a game within this year of difficult times? So, and they had such a long period of development time where they went kind of incognito. So it's such a huge and stark contrast between that time and then the last 3 years, or 2 years, I guess. Yeah. Because they already delayed the game 3 times within the year, and then they still managed to push it out just a month after. So I don't, if you're delaying the game this frequently, you might as well delay it until an undetermined amount of time. Just don't announce a release date. That's the problem with gaming devs these days, is they will, like, they're going to pressure themselves to have a release date for their next big sequel or their new IP. And they don't work for the long, they don't have the right mindset. You got to work on a game. A game like this deserves to be worked on the long term, in which they did. They had so many years of development, and I don't know what the hell happened there. It seems like they might have just rushed through QA testing. They say that it look like they're proud of their product. We sent out these PC review keys and all that. Like, we're proud of of course you're proud. It looks great. It plays. It's an interesting game. I haven't played it, but I trust that it's a good game. Except on a foundational level, you need to make sure that it runs well and that things aren't freaking out with the NPCs and how the games and the universe is acting up. You gotta. It's not just a product. Cyberpunk should be treated as like your little baby. It's a project that you love working on. So why not ensure that it's in tip-top shape and not just beautiful packaging in a cardboard box on a cardboard box. Anyway. Yeah. Moving on.
Our plans for the future and present a path for Cyberpunk 2077 on consoles and PC. We have already released 3 hotfixes improving the game, but that's just the beginning. Our ultimate goal is to fix the bugs and crashes gamers are experiencing across platforms. Please expect bigger and smaller patches on a regular basis. The first update will be dropping within 10 days, and it will be followed by another, more significant one in the following weeks. We will, of course, continue to work on the game in
10
future
days.
updates.
So this video was made, I believe this video was uploaded about 2 or 3 days ago, and we're on January 18th. Game's been out since last month. Fair enough.
And improvements beyond that. Our big plans for supporting Cyberpunk in the long term did not change. As for the free DLCs, our initial plan was to deliver them just after the release, much like we did with The Witcher 3. We decided to focus on the most important fixes and updates first, and we'll be releasing the DLCs afterwards.
Okay, wait, hold the phone, Let me see this. Hot fixes, patch 1.1, patch 1.2, free DLCs, free next-gen console update. Okay. Hopefully all the DLCs, I hope, are going to be free. If that's what they're promising, then that's fan-fucking-tastic. Hopefully this is not just, hopefully not the free DLCs that are going to be free aren't just minor little cosmetic updates like Overwatch does. and are substantial in terms of content. Yeah, I don't know, but again, hopefully the DLCs make up for the slight dumpster fire that the game was under
in the upcoming months.
on release.
For those of you playing on next-gen consoles in back compatibility, you can still expect the free next-gen update for Xbox Series consoles and PlayStation 5 arriving in 2021. We are aiming at the second half of the year. I'd like to end this video by assuring you that we treat this
I'm gonna probably be annoying for saying that, but it would have been a lot better if, again, if they hadn't done that, if they hadn't pushed the game this early, even though it was already delayed numerous times. I still feel as though it was just not the year to put it out. They still did it. Had they not done that and continued to perfect and polish the game until 2021 or 2022, I don't care. They not only could have had more time to perfect the game, but also to add those DLCs ahead of time and make them phenomenal DLCs. I don't know. I feel like developers ought to value long-term development, quality over quantity. That's what we need to be headed for. And it should have been like that years ago. But like I said, last few years have been... there has been mediocrity in the games industry with the remake culture, sequels, ports, like the Battle Royale craze with Apex, and like now there's Fall Guys, although Fall Guys at least has regular updates and they're transparent with what they're communicating to their audience. But point is, we're just not seeing enough quality and innovation lately in the games industry, and I am a little bit disappointed that CD Projekt Red didn't take their time completely. Like they had done it for the majority of the time that they were working on the game for, and then suddenly they took an opposite approach very quickly, just within a year. and I was kind of put off by that. But this is not to say that I will not play the game, because I can't afford it. I can't afford it. I don't have a good enough PC to run it. So this is one of those things where it's all happening for a reason, I guess you could say that.
Entire situation very seriously and are working hard to make it right. The guiding principles of our company are still core to what we do. We still want to make amazing games and have an open communication with you, our players. For now, our immediate focus is to work hard on making sure you enjoy Cyberpunk 2077 regardless of platform. Beyond Cyberpunk,
why does he look like David Guetta?
The future, which we'll share more about when
I said this early in the video.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video.
Thank you for being accountable, Dev, for taking up the responsibility. Anywho, so that is going to be the end of the video for today's YouTube video. Thank you all for tuning in. This was interesting, more or less. I mean, I was kind of knowing CD Projekt Red, I don't think they would have gone silent. They're not the kind of people that are gonna completely disregard their consumers. They're absolutely far from that. And I just I think that they made a mistake. It went over their heads that they were somehow going to be able to put out the best product that was going to steal all the awards of Game Awards in 2020. And I think that was a hard lesson for them. It was sort of a fallback. Like, they've been consistently great and sort of they had a really great pace with the Witcher series, and like you got increasingly better Witcher after Witcher sequel, and suddenly, the fame and the success and recognition got a little bit over their heads, and They were like, okay, we're going to be even better. We're going to rule 2020 with Cyberpunk while other developers are having a hard-ass time finishing their products. No. Hold your horses, all right? Stay humble. Humble yourselves, CD Projekt Red. Keep at it. But thank you for apologizing. Again, this is a disappointment for me, but I'm not like livid. I'm not losing it, and I'm not going berserk mode and calling them names and whatnot. We should not be doing that. No. Criticize the game, but let's not use slurs. Let's have some class and tact, gamers, all right? Because a lot of gamers could still use some class and tact and social skills, all right? It was worse in certain periods of time, people saying worse words out there. It's getting a lot tamer nowadays, but there's a lot more desperation and misery on the internet as well with the pandemic. So people are taking it out on developers with, for example, the death threat to Laura Bailey for the role of Abby in The Last of Us 2. Really? How mature are you, gamers? Are we grown adults? Are we going to blame voice actors now for writing the story or the story that you didn't happen to like? I mean, I was not. I had my own criticisms of The Last of Us 2, but you don't abuse voice actors. They are not responsible for that, for what you didn't enjoy and perhaps the plot holes or the inconsistency of the pacing of the story. No, they played fantastically well their characters. I think Laura Bailey did a stellar job. Nothing wrong to say about her performance. And it has nothing to do with my dislike for how the game progressed and where it's at right now. And so I guess where I'm going with this thought is, if we're going to be criticizing or holding developers accountable, let's do it with a great amount of sense. All right, video gamers. Anyway, that's it for today's video. It's been great ranting. I really enjoyed myself. All right. I haven't made a video on YouTube in God knows how long. So it's nice to make something for y'all YouTube users, because I've been streaming on Twitch like nonstop, and I haven't made a video in a lot of time. But maybe I'll do more of this kind of stuff in the future. Anyway, if you haven't already, follow me on Twitter to keep up with my updates. And you can hop on over to the Discord server if you want to be a part of the community beyond the YouTube comment section. With that being said, I hope you guys have a solid rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Signing out, your shitlord and emperor, Spicy Icy. Out of here. Goodbye.